Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. So I just want to thank Anne Marie and Farah for reaching out to me some time ago. And it's an honor to be here. And I want to thank Dr. Ward for presenting an amazing um, topic that really has paved the way for what I'm going to present today. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm sorry I'm not dressed in my St. Lucia National where I'm actually traveling and wasn't able to bring everything with me, but know that I am a Caribbean woman through and through. We've already spoken about the importance of taking control of our health, so I don't think I need to go deeper into that because Dr. Ward covered so much into that. What I want to share today is about owning and taking control of our health as Caribbean people. And the way I think we can do that is by education, empowerment, and something that we don't speak about enough about encouragement, encouraging each other to take charge of our health. We know a lot about education, we know a lot about empowerment, but do we do enough encouragement of each other and our patients? I'm not sure we're doing it in a way that truly inspires our patients to do what we would like them to know, or even what they know they should be doing. So this is how my body joy method was birthed from my experience as a physician over 30 years and as a patient. And I always tell people that my greatest blessing came from being on the other end of a stethoscope when I realized that the current way we practice medicine, or how we've all been taught to practice medicine, is not necessarily the correct way for our patients. And that set me out on a journey. And as a result, I created the Body Joy method. So, as Dr. Ward said, we are all patients. And I want us to all remember that no matter what, at some point, we will all be patients, even if those of us are physicians. We will all be on the other end of a stethoscope, and we will all see that other side and see the importance of practicing what I call heart-based, patient-centered medicine. So I'm going to talk about the Body Joy method and give you a little bit of how my method is used to help patients take better care of themselves and get to the optimized state of well-being. And it's about, as I said, owning our power, our passion, and our purpose, and taking control of our health. We cannot leave everything in the hands of a physician or healthcare practitioners. We know our bodies better than anybody else, and we have to play an active role in taking charge of our health. And Dr. Ward was talking about specifically women. And I agree that as women, we are the glue in society. Many of us are taking care of the generations above us, parents, even grandparents, aunts, and uncles. We're taking care of the generation alongside us, our partners, our siblings, cousins, friends. And then we're taking care of the generations below us, our children, and even our partners' children. So we are really the glue that's taking care of all generations. So I'm very, very, I promote women's health because I know that when a woman is healthy, the impact of her optimized health and well-being will then impact the generations above, the generations alongside, and the generation below. So I'm very, very grateful to be here speaking about the Body Joy method. And just one thing I want to say before we start everything, that we are Afro-Caribbean people. We're not African Americans, we're not African, we are Afro-Caribbean. And as such, we have a unique genetic makeup, and we must always remember that. And one of the reasons I say that is that I've had patients who present with diseases that are not necessarily what we would expect to find in our society, in our culture. And when you look back, they may have Jewish makeup or different types of things that you would, and so you would see a disease. And particularly, I have found it in diseases that would usually be found in Ashkenazi Jews. We're finding it not very commonly, but we are seeing it in our population. So we must be aware that as Afro-Caribbean people, we may have, little genetic differences that may not necessarily be picked up by the physicians looking after us. So we must advocate for ourselves. So something you find yourself with a doctor who says doesn't understand why you're not getting better, it might just be that the diagnosis is not correct. So we must advocate for ourselves every single time. And Dr. Ward covered that. I'm not going to go into it, but I always want everybody listening to remember that you can take charge of your health. You owe it to yourself to do that. You owe it to your families and your loved ones to take control. So how do we get onto the path to ultimate well-being? I use my body joy method, which was birthed from my experience to getting healthy. And it's into 3 pillars. We go into body, mind, and soul. And I spoke about joy and why I created the body joy method, because I think the ultimate goal of optimized well-being is joy. So when you are healthy, when you are feeling great, when you're thriving, you are tapping into your joy. So hence the name body joy. So let's talk about the body part, the physical part. How are we going to do that? How are we nourishing ourselves? What are we eating? How are we feeding ourselves? Many of us who've moved out of the Caribbean have unfortunately adopted the SAD diet, standard American diet, or even the European diets, which are not necessarily the right diets for us. We are a Caribbean people and should be eating pure, in fact, everybody should be eating pure, whole, unprocessed foods, primarily 80% of the time. So how I tell my patients is to cut out all processed foods. Anything that has more than 3 or 4 ingredients on it, try to avoid eating it. So you avoid sugar. Processed sugar is really detrimental to our health. Dairy. Not everybody can tolerate dairy. Fermented dairy might be easier, but the pure milk, and so most people are reacting to it. Gluten is something that many of us are reacting to. And unfortunately, we're not even aware that we are reacting to gluten because we are seeing the symptoms 3 or 4 days after we've ingested the gluten. And what has happened is that they have modified wheat so much that our bodies are no longer recognizing it as food. So sugar, processed foods, dairy, gluten. And if we just avoid that 80% of the time and look at how our plates are composed, half of our plate should be vegetables, 1 cup raw, half cup cooked. That's, you're going to make up your plate with something like that. 1/4 protein, whatever it is. I'm not going to advocate vegetarianism versus omnivorism. It's actually whatever you choose, but very cleanly prepared, not fried, nothing too modified. And the other 1/4 carbohydrates. And for us in the Caribbean, I always tell people, let's just have our ground provisions. We have our go manger. We eat the plantain, the dasheen, the yam, the kush, things like that. And it's unprocessed the majority of the time. So we are able to sustainably feed ourselves if we eat like that. Water, adequate water. Many of us are not getting enough water. And we want to have half our body weight in pounds and ounces of water. So if you weigh 150 pounds, then you want to get about 75 ounces of water, filtered water if you can, into your body. More if you're living in an environment that's very humid and hot, you may need to have some more. The other thing we have to talk about is exercise. I've been on holiday for a few weeks, and I have been trying to exercise as much. I always try to book a hotel with a gym, or if it doesn't have a gym, I take the stairs and I walk a lot. So you want to make sure that, especially after the age of 30, when we start losing muscle, that we focus on keeping the muscle that we have. And that is by lifting weights or using our body weight for exercise. So the current guidelines are 150 minutes of exercise per week, which is really 30 minutes a week, 5 days. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And if you can't do that, then maybe one day you do an hour, another day you do 30 minutes, but you try to get a minimum of 150 minutes of exercise a week. And cardio, you want to get your heart muscle working out as well. So you don't want to just, I see people walking at a dainty pace. You want to be able to really get your heart pumping. You want to be comfortable. You don't want to be severely short of breath, but you want to be able to, it's a little difficult to carry out a conversation. This is how you want to keep your cardio. It could be walking, it could be biking. You could take an exercise class. I'm a fan of things like Soca Size and Soca Fit because, as far as I'm concerned, every week when I go to that, I'm in a Caribbean fit every week because the music I love, and most of us love our Caribbean, our soca or Zumba. Just dancing around is really, yeah. Soca Size and Soca Fit really gets me going. And I don't even feel that I've been exercising for an hour because I'm having so much fun. And the other thing that we have to focus on, especially as we get older, is strengthening our core. Things like yoga and Pilates and other core strengthening things, because our core, which extends from just under the bust down to our pelvis, is what keeps us straight and keeps us going. So we have to find a way to keep our core strengthened. And the advent of the pandemic was really good for getting a lot of exercise classes online. A lot of gyms just went online and continued. Trainers just provided online classes. So and they have continued. So you can find anything you want online, and a lot of it can be free. So the excuse is I can't, I don't have the time. You make the time for so many other things. So make the time for your health. And exercise is a critical part of it. You can walk to work sometimes if you're in weather that can do it. Climb the stairs, use your body weight, do plank exercises in between. If you're watching TV, when the commercials come on, just do some exercises. There's so much you can do to get your body in a healthier state by exercising your heart, your muscles, and your core. And lastly, under the body joy part is your environment. We have to be aware that our skin, our lungs, and our mouths are tools through which toxins can enter our bodies. Once we open our mouth, we're exposed to the outside. So when we eat food with all the additives, these are toxins that are going into our body and forming what we call immune complexes that then can actually trigger things like autoimmune disorders. You get headaches, joint pain, so many things related to the inflammatory actions of these toxins in our foods. The other thing is our skin is the largest organ in the body. What are we putting on our body? And we strayed so far from what we used to do in the Caribbean. What happened to coconut oil on our bodies? Instead, we are putting on these scented products for us to smell good, but we can have essential oils in the coconut oil to do that. Our skin absorbs so much. We have to be aware of what we're putting on our skin, what is in our makeup, what's in our body lotions, the body washes that we're bathing with. All of these things are potential sources of toxins that some of them are actually disrupting the function of our hormones, and they are called endocrine disruptors. And these are things that we don't even realize will affect us. So we have people complaining about menopause. We have people going into perimenopause way earlier than predicted. And much of it is related to the fact that the hormones are being disrupted by these substances that are acting as false hormones and tricking our bodies to think that there are certain levels of different hormones in our bodies when they really aren't. So just be aware of your environment. What are you putting on your skin? What's in your air? Are you in an environment, in work things that are toxic? For instance, a newly carpeted place. Are you inhaling what the carpet goes off gassing? Are you inhaling these substances? What about the furniture? What is it made of? I don't know if you've ever experienced I remember once I bought desk and I assembled it. And for days I smelt it and I had to take it out because it was actually irritating me every time I breathed. It was off gassing and I didn't think about it. And it wasn't until about 3 days later I actually had to move it away. So we have to be aware of these little things that we do. And these are everyday things that you can do to optimize your health and well being. Um, and when I talk about our environment, I talk about what we have outside, but also think about what's inside. What TV shows are we watching? What podcasts are we listening to? What are we exposing ourselves? What toxic things are there on social media? These are things that can affect us directly and indirectly. So we have to be aware of what we are exposing our mind to. And that takes me to the second pillar of my method, which is mind joy. And what we're going to focus on during Mind Joy is about taking charge of our passion. What are we passionate about? What really keeps us going? And how do we nourish that? We have to make sure we have to look at sleep. It is the most underrated anti aging tool that we have at our disposal, and it's free. But so many of us are not getting adequate amounts hours of sleep, or if we are, we're not getting good enough quality, deep restorative sleep that when you get up, you feel refreshed. It is during sleep that our brain cells are refurbished to some extent, and all our cells, whatever toxins need to be removed, whatever cells that are dying need to be taken out of our bodies. This is during sleep that these repair processes take place. And if we're not getting adequate amounts of sleep, this is why we're aging faster and we're not feeling good enough. I challenge you to get a minimum of about between the sweet spot is between 7 to 9 hours of deep restorative sleep. And to do that, you want to build a sleep routine, which is avoiding um, TVs and iPads and all the things that emit blue light at least an hour and a half before bed. The other thing that interrupts our sleep, is if we eat too close to our bedtime. And another thing that has been advocated is that you eat about 2 to 3 hours before bed so that you do not have your body focusing on digestion when it should be focusing on sleep. So if you focus on eating during daylight hours, although in some parts of the world, daylight extends so much further. But if you think of our normal rhythm, especially for those of us who were raised in the Caribbean, the sun would rise about 6 o'clock, and at which point we get on with our day. And by 6:30, when the sun is setting, is when we would have an early dinner and we stop eating. Our grandparents did that. They didn't have TVs and all the constant, almost 24-hour exposure to light. So they would tend to go to bed as soon as it got dark, and they'd get up. So they'd really follow the circadian rhythm, getting up in the night, getting up with the light, and going to bed as soon as it gets dark. What happens is when we are exposure to this blue light all the time, it doesn't send a signal to our brain that it's time for bed. And when it gets dark, our brain produces melatonin, which is a signal, hi, it's time to go to bed. But when we're exposing constantly to light, this signal doesn't go off. So our body does not know it's time to shut down. So we're on our phones before bed, we're watching TV, which I'm guilty of. And my son bought me these blue light glasses, and I try to use them. But we have to make concerted effort to get sleep. And somebody's just saying social media is a huge one because we spend so much time on it, we get addicted. And before we know it, we spent an hour and we've exposed ourselves to not only the blue light, but the toxic messages that are coming out. Our brains are getting it. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I've watched a movie and I fall asleep right after, and I end up dreaming the end of the movie, or dreaming that I was in the movie, and I don't get it at sleep. So I'm really trying to focus on that. Stress. That's the second part under the mind joy. We're all stressed. We've all gone through a tremendous amount of stress over the past 3 to 4 years. The COVID pandemic was one of the most stressful events of our lifetime. And we're all slowly coming out of it. But what happens when we're stressed is that we produce cortisol. Our bodies are designed to have to fight or flight. We have a sympathetic nervous system, which causes us, that is the fight or flight. We're designed, a tiger comes or something comes, we have to send a surge of energy so that we can either fight it or fly away. And the other thing we don't talk about enough in fight or flight is that we can freeze. We can actually stay so that the tiger will say, oh, she's not worth it. I'm just going to run. She's, pretend we're actually dead and they just leave us. But a lot of us are continuously fighting tigers in the form of emails, social media, 24-hour television. So we're stuck in this sympathetic overdrive, constantly producing cortisol, which does not allow us to rest. So we're feeling constantly on. We're tired but wired. So you want to sleep, but your body can't shut down. So you really want to be able to get into this out of the sympathetic overdrive into a parasympathetic rest and digest. And very simple. You acknowledge that you are stressed. You try to figure out what you're going to do about it. You can either delegate it, you can ditch it, whatever is causing you stress, do it. And I have a little joke is that I told a patient that once. She came to me a year later and said, well, you told me to ditch the stress, so I gave up my job and started my own business. Thank you. I was so scared that she was going to tell me something else. Didn't expect her to leave the job, but it was the best thing that she ever did for herself, she said. And so we ditch it, we delegate it, or we change our attitude towards it. Whatever you think is stressing you, is there another way you can look at it so that it's less stressful? And there are tools that we can use as well to manage stress, and that is deep breathing. I use something called box breathing, which is you breathe in for 4, you hold that in breath for 4, you exhale to the count of 4, and after you exhale, you hold it for 4 before you take a deep breath in. And that has been invaluable in helping me, especially during the pandemic. When I was scared like everybody else. Before I would go to work, I would sit in my car and do a few rounds of box breathing. The other thing that helped me with the stress management was meditation, journaling, and prayer, which we'll get into the third pillar. So stress management is key. And exercise is a critical factor in managing stress. I find that when I exercise regularly, I am better able to manage stress. The endorphins that are released after exercise are an amazing tool for stress management. And finally, when we talk about mind joy, we talk about your self-worth. How do you feel about yourself? What are you contributing to your society? How do you feel about the work that you do in the world? And that is so important for us. And I am so grateful that I was on the other end of the stethoscope, which allowed me to tap into that and realize that I was not happy practicing medicine the way I was taught, and I would find another way. And I went in search of it, and that's how I found functional and integrative medicine. And the third pillar, which is the final pillar, which is the soul joy. How are we tapping into our spirituality? And this is not about religion. This is spirituality. It's about our connections with something greater than ourselves. And I call it God. Some people call it Jah. Some people say it's nature. Some people say it's Buddha. Or it's another belief. But you must believe in something guiding your life, something greater than yourself guiding us down wherever we are. Connection to our loved ones. And COVID sort of was a two-faced sword in that. We were forced to be connected with those people because we were in lockdown, but we also disconnected from ourselves and disconnected from them because we were so on Zoom and all of these tools that we sort of disconnected from people. We were forced to in some ways because we had physical distancing and social distancing, and that really affected our connections with people. So it's about reconnecting with those people we love. And it's very simple. Are we looking at the people we love in the eye? Are we telling them how we feel about them? Are we spending enough time with our families? And that is something that a lot of people realized that during COVID, they missed their families or they missed the connections they had with people that they loved. And the great resignation has been, I think, that people have realized that all this time they spend on working and away from their kids and their families wasn't really sustaining them in the way that they thought they would. So they have found that they staying home with their families, spending more time has really brought them this soul joy. And finally, the most important person we have to connect with is with ourselves. And so many of us have disconnected from ourselves, especially during COVID. It is the greatest thing we can do for ourselves is to tap into our self-acceptance, acceptance of who we are as a people, who we are. You know, many times we are living with regret or living in the past. It's time, and I'm giving you permission at this moment, if you're listening to me, to ditch that and forgive yourselves. The healing power of forgiveness is not tapped into enough. Forgive ourselves for things we did or wish we had done, things that, things that you said to people. We tend to quickly forgive others and not forgive ourselves. Right now, if you're listening, I'm asking you to please, at this moment, just take a deep breath, forgive yourselves, and realize that you have now reconnected with this beautiful person that you are. And then there we are. Brand new. It's a brand new moment. And you can start over. You can always start over. Self-love and self-acceptance is the greatest gift you can give up. The greatest gift. Forgive yourself and tap into this unique person that you are. So I kind of lost track of the time. I'm not sure if Farah is giving me a little heads up, but
I am right here with you. I'm right here. We have a
oh,
few more minutes, 1 or 2
okay.
more minutes.
Okay. So finally, I just wanted to talk about the Caribbean Spark, which is, I think, in the expo. During the pandemic, I felt so helpless. I would sit at my house and think there are so many people who are suffering in one way or other. It could be physical illness, mental illness, emotional, social. There were so many people. And I wanted to do something more. And a little spark was born where I wanted to share the stories of people who sounded like us, who looked like us. Because when you look on TV or you look on at PBS or any of the other shows, if you ever look at a medical show, there's nobody who looks like us, who sounds like us. So hence Caribbean Spark was born, where I got some of my patients to talk about their stories, who look like you, who sound like you, who could tell you things like they get their joy from going to the beach or by eating mangoes, or carnival is what really revs them up. So we really have to really tap into our spark. And this is how Caribbean Spark was born, igniting a spark of well-being. And this is really where I want us to go. So Farah has the link. You can see the videos. There are 11 videos. You can listen to them. And I'm hoping that something you hear will spark your interest in taking charge of your health. You will be educated, you will be empowered, and you will be encouraged. At least that is my hope. This is what Caribbean Spark was. And then from there, we have this Facebook group that you can get into. It's a paid group, but you can get into it because what I want to do is to continue educating. You know, something comes up or we're going through something in the Caribbean or throughout the world. For instance, we've just in New York gone through the so many of our people are exposed to the toxic things. What are we doing to say things like drinking more water, wearing your mask, making sure that you are flushing out your system, making sure your liver is working well? Because remember, the toxins you are breathing in, but they're also on your skin. Are you making sure that your skin is covered when you go outside? These are things that we need to be talking about to educate and empower ourselves as a Caribbean people. So I want to thank Farah and Anne-Marie for bringing me on today. I hope that something I've said has inspired you to take ownership of your health, to tap into your power, to tap into your purpose, and to tap into your passion. Thank you.
Beautiful, Dr. Beaubrun. Thank you very much. This